Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion continued, Book 1, Chapter 17, looking now at sections 5 and 6. This whole chapter is on the uses of the providence of God for the believer. Here he continues on the train of thought that he picked up on and highlighted in section 3, that the activities of evil, of someone who deliberately sins or plans some atrocity to be carried out, is not laid at the feet of God. I mean, the whole next chapter is going to be devoted to the instrumentality that God makes of wickedness without himself being tainted by it. But evil is never in service to God's revealed will, we would say, even though God, in his good providence, can use it or turn it for good. That is to say that we would deny that someone who is engaging in sin deliberately and as a pattern is in service to the will of God. That is, we account for and understand personal agency and accountability in such a way that we take account for the person and the personhood of that individual who is moving away from God in sin and unbelief. And that factors into the equation. That is to say, it is reasonable and biblical when somebody goes off and does their own thing that's in violation of God's revealed will, that is his law, the moral law of God, the 10 commandments. We could add more to that, but that is the sum and substance of it. What are they in service of? Their own designs and desires for what they want to have happen. And if they have any thought of God, it's possible they might not have any conscious thought of God, but if they do have a conscious thought of God, it's that they hate him. It's that they are against him, is that they are frustrated by his creation and the life he's given them and his revealed will and his moral law. They hate it. They're frustrated by it. They want to rally a battle cry against it. They want to try and shove off the yoke of God's sovereignty as creator and king, a la Psalm 2, and do their own thing, regardless of the consequences. And that is what we need to hold in mind as we consider the use to be made of God's providence in our lives. Calvin gives a helpful illustration of how we can think of this in terms of God's absolute control and decree from the foundation of the world in and through and over all things, and yet his detachment from sin and the workings of sin and evil. He gives the illustration of a dead body, some sort of rotting body out in a field, and then the heat and rays of the sun that as they shine upon and produce heat in and around that body, cause it to putrefy, essentially, and give off a greater odor and accelerate its decay and decomposition. Now, if we were seeing that scene reasonably, rationally, what are we going to blame the smell on and the decay? The rays of the sun or the deadness of the body? The deadness of the body, right? For we know that from this same sun proceeds what? Life that causes crops to grow and sustains life, both for human beings and all the other creatures that God has made. So that is something that we must keep in mind, that when we think of the dispensations of God and how nothing happens fortuitously, that is on fortune, we will direct our eyes to the principal cause of the events, that is God, and then also at the same time due regard to inferior causes or secondary causes in their own place. What does that get at? What does that mean? That is to say, God is pleased to work by secondary means, and His will. He is sovereign enough to account for the free agency and free decision making, good or bad, of creatures made in His image. And at one point, we could break it down and say everybody believes in the absolute providence of God in one strict sense. Had God not given birth to the world and all things by the word of His power, nothing that we see around us now would be taking place, including our own lives. And so, in that sense, it must be laid at the feet of God that He is the primary agent and author of absolutely everything. And yes, obviously, as the world moves on, it gets more complicated in that. All right, well, I hope that was a benefit to you. Thanks for listening.